Hi, everyone. Welcome to Both Sides of the Story. I'm your host, Alan Janae from CBS 4. Thanks for joining us. We complete our final rounds tonight with the second debate from our winners bracket, and it's sure going to be a great one. On tonight's show, students from George Washington High School who know each other compete for a spot in the winners bracket championship. So let's meet our participants now. First up, Kalina Kulig, a senior from GW High School in Denver. Let's hear her story.
My name is Kalina Kulig, and I go to George Washington High School, where I'm a senior. I'm very passionate about what's going on in the world, so that inspires me to keep debating, and that's part of what inspires me to research every resolution too, because I like finding out how the world works, and I like exploring different ideas. I'm also very involved in local politics. I love researching that and then attending different events that are related to that.
Kalina is a really hard worker on our team. She's always thinking about the bigger picture, and the kind of debate that she does is focused on the world the way it ought to be. So they often use different philosophical concepts in order to support that. Kalina has done a great deal of reading and exploring, and she's really able to break that down so that it's understandable and also really helps support her debate argument.
One of my favorite things to do is talk to people from other schools at tournaments and meet them and hear about what their life is like, and that's been something that I've enjoyed.
All right, you've met her. Now, if you've been watching our 2021 tournament, and we do have a lot of groupies out there, we were likely expecting to see the winner from our fourth debate, Yibsira Fitzham from Rangeview High School. But unfortunately, Yibsira needed to drop out of this year's tournament due to some other academic responsibilities in her senior year. So with limited time to prepare for the debate, we are very lucky to have our next student join the competition. Ethan Carter, also a senior from George Washington High School in Denver. And Ethan, your coach tells me that you have a sophisticated worldview that you defend with a lot of conviction. But tell me just a little bit about yourself, because we didn't have time to make a video. Tell me about what events you compete in, first of all, in speech and debate.
Yeah, sure. So I do Lincoln Douglas debate, which is the same as my opponent. We just kind of debate again about philosophies and like how the world should be and not really what it is. And
of course, there are other things. Every debater out here amazes me with all the things that they do. Tell me about some of the other things that you do in addition to speech and debate.
So outside of speech and debate, I'm the president of our Hispanic Heritage Club, La Casa. I'm also very much prevalent within the activist scene around Denver and Aurora.
Oh, wow. And what do you think you can do with speech and debate and this experience you're doing in high school?
I'm really looking forward to going into something like law or politics. So I feel like speech and debate is really just giving me like the tools and like the set framework on how to actually debate with morals and how to use those morals and inspire others while also creating the most just world for the greatest number of people.
Absolute pleasure to have you here, Ethan. Thank you very much for coming on such short notice. Two of the top debaters in our state you're going to be watching today. Also joining us is our special panel of experts who will offer their analysis of our debate today. They are Dominic Dezzutti, host of Colorado Inside Out, the weekly roundtable program here on PBS 12. He's joined by Kim O'Connor, co-director of the Young Writers Program at the Lighthouse Writers Workshop, and Marianne Goodland, chief legislative reporter with Colorado Politics. All right, let's set our ground rules right now. Each side will present their case. They'll ask each other questions. They'll have a chance to offer rebuttals as well. Both students have prepared a pro and a con case for tonight's debate, and they won't know which side they'll defend until we have a coin flip right here in our studio. Then when it is finished, we'll go to our panel for questions and we'll find out who they felt offered the best arguments. So let's get started. Here we go. Here's our issue up for debate. It is this: is mass transportation should be prioritized as the solution to traffic congestion in Colorado? Should we prioritize mass transportation? Let's have our coin flip right now and get ourselves underway. Kalina, I'm going to have you call it heads or tails.
Heads.
And heads it is. What would you like?
I'll take the affirmative.
Okay, pro, con over on this side. So that means, Kalina, as the proponent during this round, the floor is now yours to get things going for 3 minutes. Go ahead.
I affirm the resolution. Mass transportation should be prioritized as the solution to traffic congestion in Colorado for 3 reasons. The first reason that mass transportation is a valuable solution to traffic is that it mitigates climate change. Mass transportation is anything that gets many people from one place to another and includes things like buses, trains, shuttles, subways, and light rails. A study conducted by the Colorado Department of Transportation proves that mass transportation significantly reduces traffic. They also elaborate on its environmental benefits, which include reduced fossil fuel use, better oil efficiency, and lower pollution. Mitigating climate change should be a priority right now, and accessible public transportation is one way to achieve that. Coloradans should also seize the opportunity to reduce air pollution. According to the Denver Post, Colorado's air quality is deteriorating. If you remember the smoke from the fires last summer, their report confirmed that things will only get worse. Mass transportation reduces the air pollution per capita, making it far better for the environment. The next clear benefit of mass transportation is the opportunities that come with it. The American Public Transport Association found that taking the bus saves the average consumer more than $10,000 every year. That adds up. The truth is that for many Coloradans, driving simply isn't an option. And that's where mass transportation comes in. By connecting the city, it opens up employment opportunities. This creates jobs, benefiting the entire economy. The same organization found that we gain $4 for every $1 spent on buses and trains. What's more, this economic growth directly benefits low-income individuals because they are more likely to use mass transportation. But what if someone can't afford to take the bus? Well, not only is riding the bus far cheaper than using a car, but Colorado already has fare assistance programs in place that can be expanded on. The last reason that mass transportation should be prioritized is the most important: safety. The Institute for Highway Safety reported close to 600 deaths from car crashes in 2019 in Colorado alone. 91 of those killed were teenagers. National Express found in a study that mass transit is 10 times safer than driving. If people, especially teens, had used buses instead of driving in 2019, we would have saved 540 lives. Therefore, mass transportation should be prioritized because it mitigates climate change, creates opportunities, and saves lives.
Kalina Kulig, thank you very much. And now, Ethan Carter, you have 2 minutes for questions and cross-examination. Go right ahead.
Great. So you talk a lot about climate change, opportunity, these other impacts, but what does your case have to do with actually decreasing congestion for traffic?
Great question. So the very first empiric that I read was from the Colorado Department of Transportation, and in a study they found that mass transportation significantly reduces traffic congestion. So in this round, I'm arguing that it's the best solution, not only because it reduces congestion, but because it reduces congestion along with giving us this whole other array of benefits.
Okay, what causes this congestion?
This congestion is caused by many things, but I would say people's not using mass transportation is actually part of the problem here.
Great. And you talk a lot about opportunity, but you mentioned that there's an existing program that allows people in lower income communities to already have this. What else are you going to be doing on the affirmative side when in context to giving a mass transportation more economic priority?
Of course. So the ways that the affirmative side is going to help lower income communities are first mitigating climate change, which unfortunately will weigh the heaviest on them. Most importantly, literally saving lives, as I've shown that mass transportation is far safer. And finally, economic benefits by connecting the city and opening up more job opportunities for everyone, but especially people in low-income communities.
Great. So you talk about job opportunities. So do you agree with the statement that current congestion in traffic in Colorado is could cause a decrease in our economy?
That's not necessarily what I'm saying. My argument here is that if we were to decrease traffic and give people a way to get to work that's $10,000 cheaper every year, that opens up opportunities and that enables people to take jobs a little bit farther away from their house and ultimately benefits the economy by 400% compared to what we spend.
All right, you see our question up there. We'll have to wrap up the questions right there. Should mass transportation be prioritized as the solution to traffic congestion in Colorado? In the affirmative, we have Kalina. In the negative, we have Ethan. Ethan, now the floor is yours in the neg for 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Great. I negate the resolved mass transportation should be prioritized as the solution to traffic congestion in Colorado for the following 3 reasons. First, Colorado's poor infrastructure on highways and roads leads to congestion. Potholes are just one of many examples of how congestion happens. According to CDOT, Colorado ranks 28th in the nation for pavement condition on urban interstates and in the bottom 5 for pavement condition along rural interstates. Road infrastructure is a problem of mass transportation is pointless if these streets are not safe. Addressing poor infrastructure must come first before prioritizing anything else. Too many Coloradans are wasting too much of their time and money stuck on congested and potholed roads, said Mike Kopp, president and CEO of Colorado Concern. Coloradans pay the price of lackluster road infrastructure. Second, congestion is caused by weak infrastructure, which negatively impacts the economy. Have you ever been rushing to work while there's been road work or on the highway or freeway? Most likely you have. Poor road infrastructure harms our economy. According to a TRIP report, nearly half of Colorado's major locally and state maintained roads are in poor or mediocre condition. These poor and mediocre conditions can negatively impact our economy. The efficiency and condition of Colorado's transportation system, particularly in its highways, is critical to the health of the state's economy. Approximately 1.1 million full-time jobs in Colorado in key industries such as tourism, retail sales, agriculture, and manufacturing are dependent on the quality, safety, and reliability of the state's transportation infrastructure network. If we keep ignoring infrastructure, our flourishing economy will become stale. Third, the development of highway traffic lights will reduce congestion. Besides improving the current road infrastructure, it is essential to invest in new technology to reduce congestion. According to AP News, many entrance ramps on Metro Denver's highways have traffic lights to control traffic flow, but they aren't programmed to respond to the real-time conditions. By making consistent and minute changes to the length of time cars wait on the entrance ramps before merging onto the highway, traffic engineers believe slowdowns and log jams can be reduced greatly or avoided altogether. This idea was drawn from existing Australian infrastructure for the M1 freeway, which has reduced congestion. The number of vehicles getting through increased by 25% during peak commuting periods. Travel speeds improved 35 to 60% during peak, and crashes went down by 20 to 50%. Thus proving that in response to mass congestion, the infrastructure of roads and highway traffic lights must be prioritized over mass transportation. For these reasons, I negate. I now stand open for cross-examination.
Ethan, thank you very much. As he says, cross-examination time. Questions? Kalina, here you go. 2 minutes. Go right ahead.
Great. So you talk a lot about fixing infrastructure here. Is that mutually exclusive with also improving our mass transportation system?
The infrastructure I'm talking about specifically is in context of roads. Our roads, like I mentioned in the CDOT evidence, are horrible, amongst the worst in the nation, especially on rural and on urban interstates. The fact that people do not have access to safe roads is going to increase crashes, but also commute time.
Okay, but why does that detract from mass transportation?
That detracts because you're not going to be able to have effective mass transportation if the infrastructure of roads are not beneficial. You cannot have a big gap, a big movement towards buses if the streets that these buses are riding on are not safe and are not effective, because I've proven throughout my case that mass congestion in Colorado in traffic.
Okay, so fixing the roads is part of mass transportation then?
No, I'm saying that you cannot have mass transportation when the roads are not fixed.
Okay, so you're saying it's a prerequisite?
Yes, thus why we need to prioritize fixing infrastructure of roads.
But if they go hand in hand, why can't we just do both of them?
We need to prioritize one over the other, because if you do not have beneficial roads first, then you're not going to be able to fulfill the infrastructure properly. For example, if you were to say we're going to do both of them at the same time, you're not putting one at priority and one which needs needs to be addressed more. We need to address what is actually going to.
Okay, and then you talk about how weak infrastructure leads to congestion. The people that are affected by that right now are mostly those people that can already drive, right?
Correct.
Okay, so why not prioritize the people who can't drive and maybe need to rely on mass transportation?
But see, your mass transportation is not going to be fixed. It's not going to fix the solution. Well, the people that are going to drive no matter what with either a mass transportation.
Okay, but you just said that we're mostly helping people that can drive already, right?
Yes.
Why not help those people that can't afford cars as our priority in the round?
That's not gonna help with the actual issue of solving traffic congestion. Yes, that is a great idea, but when looking at the topicality of the debate, we need to focus on reducing traffic congestion over anything else.
All right, we'll have to end the questions right there. Kalina, now 2 minutes for a rebuttal. Go.
In this speech, I'll be running down the negative case and demonstrating why the affirmative will stand strong in today's round. First, my opponent claims that poor infrastructure is at the root of congestion. This is certainly part of congestion, but it's not the only factor. In fact, the Colorado Department of Transportation did find that the root of traffic also has to do with the lack of accessible mass transportation. If we prioritize mass transportation, we are reducing the number of people on the road, and that is the best long-term solution to traffic congestion. If we were to solve potholes, sure, that helps in the short term, but there are still the same number of people on the road. On the other hand, if we prioritize mass transportation, we're actually reducing the number of people driving, meaning that congestion is reduced in the short and the long term. What's more, my opponent talks about infrastructure in both of his first points, and none of this is mutually exclusive with anything that I'm advocating for. Yes, we can have infrastructure and mass transportation, but mass transportation ought to come first. My opponent told you during cross-examination that his infrastructure plans prioritize people who can already drive. But as I've demonstrated, that's not everybody. In fact, it costs $10,000 more every year to drive yourself to work than to take the bus. So I'm saying let's prioritize those people who can't afford to drive. Let's prioritize the low-income people. And in so doing, we could also have things like highway traffic lights, but ultimately recognize that the priority ought to be the low-income people and the long-term benefits of reducing congestion going forward.
Well, we have a debate right here. The big question today: should mass transportation be prioritized as a solution to our traffic problems in Colorado? Ethan, 3 minutes now to respond and close. Go.
Great. Let's start off on the affirmative side of the debate today. So firstly, my opponent brings up climate change. Well, yes, this argument sounds great as it is in a general debate. We're talking about traffic congestion specifically. We need to prioritize what is going to reduce traffic congestion rather than reducing climate change, because the overall thing that we're debating today is not whether or not climate change is good or bad or how to reduce it. We're debating how to mitigate traffic congestion. And on this point, we have to also look at opportunity. My opponent, yes, I agree, there are opportunities, but when we're looking at what prioritizes and what actually causes congestion, think about the evidence I read. 1.1 million Coloradans during their commute are negatively affected by poor infrastructure within roadways and on interstates. So to make the claim that yes, it is just solely based off of a lackluster mass transportation unit, while that could be seen as fair, we have to overall prioritize making sure the infrastructure is beneficial. If the infrastructure is not beneficial, what we're going to see is a big swoop of mass transportation happening while these roads are in horrible conditions. Again, Colorado is ranked 5th in the nation for rural interstates and is ranked 28th in the nation for urban interstates. That is a big problem. This needs to be prioritized over anything around. I'm not going to disagree inherently with the idea or the beneficial effects of my opponent's case. But what I'm going to say is that this is not really topical. This is not a necessity for us to look at in today's round. When evaluating this debate, we need to prioritize what is going to reduce the most amount of congestion. Think about this, for example. If you are on a road and there's an accident caused by lackluster infrastructure, whether that be on I-25 or I-225, that is not going to be changed whether there is mass transportation or not. So the idea is to reduce congestion. What we must do and what we ought to do is we ought to create a stable infrastructure. Again, it is not my burden to say that we do not have to have mass transportation, but in response to congestion, it is evident that the only way to the only way to reduce traffic congestion is through traffic lights and road infrastructure. And I'm just going to be finally giving you reasons why the negative won today's debate. First, we have to prioritize streets. Again, like I said in my first speech, if the streets are not safe, how can we put our low-income Coloradans onto public transportation? That is putting them at risk. Also, we need to prioritize better road infrastructure. We are amongst the lower echelon of states in our country when it comes to the infrastructure of our roads. If we are not prioritizing that, that is what's going to cause us the most amount of harm in the long run. Again, this is not a short-term solution because fixing infrastructure is going to maintain a lackluster congestion. And finally, you have to vote for the negative because of traffic lights. I provide a stable idea of the case study from Australia of how traffic lights specifically reduce congestion and crashes. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
All right, Ethan Cutter in the negative, Kalina Kulig in the affirmative. And now 1 minute for your close. Kalina, go ahead.
To close out the round, I'd like to give you several key impacts. First, the idea of climate change. This is the #1 priority in the round because it's something that will affect everybody, but weigh especially heavily on the communities that we are prioritizing, being low-income communities in today's round. I've shown you that mass transportation reduces the number of people on the road in the long term, far more so than my opponent's infrastructure plans. Thus, to solve climate change, we have to preference affirmative. Next, the idea of opportunities. I've proven to you that we get a 400% return on investment from putting money into mass transportation. And finally, safety. The affirmative side is saving 540 lives, especially those of teenagers. This is also a key impact in today's round and is a reason why we should prioritize mass transportation.
Kalina, thank you very much. We'll have to wrap it up there. There is your debate. Let's go to our illustrious panel now. Dominic, if I told you two people who probably only recently got their licenses would be the ones on this issue, you'd be amazed.
I would absolutely be amazed. What a fantastic way to close out our semifinal debates with this conversation. You both have done a fantastic job, but your job is not over yet. It's time for some questions from our judges. Kim, why don't you start it off with a question for Kalina?
Kalina, mass transportation, the success of it depends on people choosing to take it. What do you say to people who simply won't consider it, either because of how long it takes to get from place to place or other reasons, maybe not wanting to be around people because of COVID?
Absolutely, that's a great question. I believe part of prioritizing mass transportation does mean making it safer. But another problem that we're seeing right now isn't that people don't want to take mass transportation, but is problems related to accessibility. I've shown you that mass transportation is $10,000 cheaper, which is a great incentive. So we ought to make it more accessible so that more people can take it and get the incredible benefits that come with it.
Marianne, it's your turn for your question for Kalina.
Thank you very much. Kalina, I want to ask you about the cost of these things. Expanding mass transit would require going into neighborhoods that right now don't get it, a lot of low-income neighborhoods, and you talk a lot about how this is going to help low-income people, but you have a lot of people who aren't willing to spend 2 to 3 hours on a bus or a train to get around. Where's the cost on this? Where's the money going to come from?
Another great question. So for this, we have kind of two statistics that help us out. The first is that we have a 4-to-1 return on investment. So every dollar the city spends, we get $4 in return. So rather than being a cost or a financial burden on the city, this is actually of a massive economic benefit. And second, for those that can't or don't want to spend this amount of money on transportation, not only is it cheaper, but the city already has fare assistance programs in place that can reduce that cost.
Ethan, it's your turn. Kim, a question for Ethan?
Yes, Ethan, you mentioned the lights that mitigate the congestion on interstates, but what about the congestion on the city streets or other streets that can't be controlled with these lights?
Yeah, so if you look back to my case, I talk a lot about like potholes and stuff like that, but also like urban roads and how that is negatively affected by lackluster infrastructure. The issue is that when we live in, if you're in the city and there are large amounts of potholes, that's going to cause delays. For example, if a pothole causes an accident, that's going to lead to you being backed up. And the best way to mitigate this is through increasing our infrastructure within our roads and, our highways. As I've mentioned, we have the opportunity to get out of the bottom echelon of our nation when it comes to road infrastructure.
Marianne, your question for Ethan.
Thanks very much. Hi, Ethan. What's the solution in terms of cost to these infrastructure problems? Because the state legislature, for example, has prioritized things like mass transit, green cars, and other things like that. They're not as inclined to put money into some of these big highway projects. They've sort of turned back from that. Where's the money going to come from?
The money will come from taxpayers, but at the end of the day, that money derived from taxpayers is going to be worth it. Again, if you look back to the evidence provided for the example from the M1 freeway in Australia, when that traffic light program was put in initiative, the likelihood of there being fatalities from a crash decreased from 50%. That is an inherent statistic of how this program will work. Yes, it's going to be costly. Yes, that may deter people. But at the end of the day, when we're looking at what is best to reduce congestion, that is going to be increasing infrastructure. Yes, it may come out of our pockets and hurt us, but that money will help us overall in the long run.
Alan, we've got to figure out who moves on to the championship round. We have some work to do. Give us a minute, see if we can figure this out.
All right, illustrious panel, do your best over there. We'll let them talk, and that'll give me a moment to let you know this. Now, you know that next week begins our third place matches, first from our consolation bracket. And of course, this all leads to our championship matches, which come up on December 10th and December 17th. So make a note of those. You won't want to miss it. We've had some great debates this fall. All right, illustrious panel, do we have your decision?
We do indeed, Ellen. First of all, both Kalina and Ethan, you need to know that we thought you did a fantastic job. And as one of the first things we mentioned here is that as difficult as it was to judge the last debate, this one was even tougher. So you need to know this was really hard for us to come up with it. But it is our job to pick a winner. Kalina, we decided that with both how agile you were in handling questions and how you were able to offer more valid arguments, we felt in the end helped you win the day. Congratulations and good luck in the championship.
All right, Kalina, congratulations. Kalina and congratulations go hand in hand. I guess that works out well. So congratulations to you. You'll go on now to compete in the winner's bracket. That's the championship coming up on the 17th of December. Ethan, we're going to see you in the third place matchup on December 3rd. And I can tell you your competition there is tough. You both gave our viewers a wonderful debate tonight, and you both ought to be very proud as well. That's all the time we have for our program tonight. I want to thank our excellent students and our esteemed, illustrious panel for their judgment. And I want to thank you for tuning in. It is the support of viewers like you, as well as our sponsors, that helps to make this show a reality. You can catch up on past episodes of this program on pbs12.org, and you can catch me on CBS4 for all the latest news and information impacting Colorado. For everyone here at PBS 12, I'm Alan Janae. Thanks for watching, and that is Both Sides of the Story.